next one is the panel discussion, which is being hosted by Mr. Sailajanandan Nayak, CMO Ingram Micro India Private Limited, and the topic is storytelling and the art of winning the hearts and minds of the customers. Looking at this pandemic, and when the situation is very bad and everyone is working from home and consuming the content from home. So we have got Sapna Chadha, Senior Country Manager, Managing Director, Google India and South Asia. So also Nicki, Senior Director, Marketing, Asia Pacific, Japan, Sophos, Australia, and Lynn, Huang, Freeman, Asia Pacific, CMO and Ex-CMO, Motorola, and Honeywell. Welcome all of you. It's now SN up to you. Please take it down.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'll take it from here. Hi, everyone. My name is Sailajanandan Nayak. Because of my rather long first name, I usually go by my initials. So I'm SN for you. And as Sanjay mentioned, we are really happy to have an amazing set of panelists for this panel discussion. So let me just once again invite our first panelist, Nicki Dewhurst. Nicki is the Asia Pacific Marketing Director for Sophos, which is a leading cybersecurity company. Nicki, if you can hear this, now would be the good time to turn your camera on.
My camera is on. Good evening, everybody. It's very, very late, coming up to midnight here in Australia, but happy to be here. So good evening, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicki. And Sanjay, I believe you owe Nicki a bottle of her favorite Chardonnay or Pinot Noir, whatever it is that Nicki likes.
Definitely, Nicki. Whenever she is here or I'm there in Australia, definitely.
Right.
I look forward to sharing it with you, perhaps in India, in maybe a year or two when we're able to travel again.
Okay.
Indeed. And just to give everyone a little more insight into Nicki's accomplishments. Nicki is a really experienced marketing leader. She has over 2 decades of experience at the helm of different companies, specifically in technology and telecoms. She has led marketing at Cisco, Canon, and a number of other companies. So there's a lot that we can learn. And now happy to introduce our second panelist, Lynn Huang Freeman. Hi, Lynn. Great to see you. I know it's a little late in Singapore, but not as late as it is in Sydney. So welcome to the panel. And everyone, just to let you know, Nicki, Lynn is, again, a very acclaimed marketing leader. She has been recognized as one of the most influential CMOs of Asia Pacific. So, really happy to have Lynn and Nicki with us. Unfortunately, Sapna could not join, but trust me, we will make up for it.
Actually, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, Sapna, hi.
Yeah. Hi, I'm here. I hope you can see me okay.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Fantastic. So glad you could join us. I received some misinformation that you would not be able to make it, but super excited to have you with us, Sapna.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Great. So for everyone's information, Sapna is the head of marketing for Google in Southeast Asia and India, of course. And yeah, I think we have a full house, people. So let's kick it off. And the topic itself is a very, very interesting one. I think it's close to every marketeer's heart, right? Which is storytelling. We have been telling stories from childhood, sometimes to get out of sticky situations. When we tell a lie as a kid, we make elaborate stories to cover it up. As we grow up and as we become more professionally respectable, we still continue to tell stories, but this time with a professional angle, that is to sell our products and services. So storytelling is actually integral to what we do in our day-to-day lives as marketeers. Even in my day-to-day daily job at Ingram Micro, we tell lots of stories. So, and I hope we'll be able to touch upon some of those examples. So I think let's kick it off, having set the context and having established why storytelling is so important. Nicki, the first question to you would be, can you think of some really good examples of storytelling that you've come across in marketing in recent times?
Yeah, absolutely. One that springs to mind is actually not from B2B, even though my experience is all B2B. But you may have heard of a brand called Yeti. And Yeti, they make coolers. They make drink coolers, and they make what we call in Australia eskies. So things to keep your food and beverages cold. You know what? They tell stories in a fabulous way. They recently ran a small short film festival, and they created 8 short films. And these are films about people. It has nothing to do with coolers. It's about people doing interesting things and challenging themselves in different ways. So these films are really short, they're engaging, and they're beautiful to look at. And they took that all around the US because they couldn't take it globally, but they would plan to take that globally. And I think that's a really interesting way of connecting an audience with a brand by telling stories about people, interesting people doing interesting things that actually has nothing to do with what they actually sell. So for me, that's something that really stands out.
Excellent. Great point, Nicki. And I'm sure I've just put it on the screen so that after this is over, I'm sure people would be curious to check out Yeti and have a look at some of these ad films, or films rather. They wouldn't really be ad films. Sapna or Lynn, do you have any highlights that come to your mind in terms of great examples of storytelling?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. You just mentioned that all of us, when we were kids, we, know how to tell stories. I'm not saying telling a lie, but tell stories to our teachers, parents, friends, etc. So it's quite interesting. I thought, one of the things, as a marketeer for years, so apparently I have led lots of, kind of campaigns or storytelling efforts. But one of the things I think I felt really, kind of proud of was my previous company, Honeywell. So when they try to, Honeywell is kind of a big name, but, it's actually has been in the process of transforming itself from more traditional kind of an industrial company to a more software-driven cyber industrial company. So in the process, they actually refined the brand purpose. So I was part of that whole global, marketing leadership representing APAC in that whole process. So one of the key way for us to kind of refine everything from brand promise to, the value proposition is really to engage the employees. So the way, we did was actually invite the employees to tell their stories, tell how their job actually can impact the world. And also can make the future together with the customers and for the customers. So till today, if you even just Google hashtag future shapers, then you will see Honeywell pops out, and then you can read all those fantastic stories from the normal employees, actually how their jobs really impact the future, create the future, shape the future together with the customers. So I thought that was really good example of storytelling, because storytelling is not just about your products, your business. It's really about, for business, it's about not just even the brand, it's about your purpose. What does that mean, right? What do you stand for? What's in it for your target audience? What's in it for your customers? So in my view, the storytelling, again, is not about you. It's really about your target audience. It's about your customers. So why customers should even, pay attention to your story, and why customers should even believe in your story. So this, we as marketeers have to address these two fundamental questions, the why questions. Then can we do a really good job in terms of the storytelling? So what Honeywell did was started from let the employees tell the story, apparently get them, convinced that of the new brand purpose, everything, and from there to influence the market and influence the customers and stakeholders.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynn. I think you touched upon some really valuable points here, that it's not just about telling a story that highlights your product and services, but it's a more holistic approach, right? So I think let's hold that thought, and we will come back to it a little later. But since, pretty much most of us here are in the B2B space, so Sapna, a very important question, I think very relevant for all of us, is how important do you think is storytelling from a B2B perspective?
Well, I think, I think there was a lot of discussion on the earlier panel around, the sales and marketing. And sometimes we put, these barriers in our mind thinking that, things are very different, or that there's different objectives between consumer marketing and B2B marketing, in the same way that we look at sales and marketing being very different. I actually think consumer marketing and B2B marketing are very, very interlinked. In my job, I get to do both day in and day out. And I think from that lens, all of the learnings that we can get from consumer marketing can apply to to B2B marketing in the same way. For example, we have to build the brand. You have to drive customer connect. Ultimately, you are still, regardless of the industry, you have to speak to humans, right? And you're connecting with an audience on a more emotional level, even when it is a business product. When you're marketing to businesses, companies, sometimes forget about the fact that their target buyers are humans who have a life and aren't just, looking to procure a product in the business sense. And, I think, one of the stats I've seen is that 50% of B2B buyers are actually likely to purchase from a brand if they can emotionally connect with it. And so when I think about storytelling being a powerful strategy, I think it's critical that we employ a lot of the same techniques that we would have on the consumer side. For example, showing and not telling. I think you have to story tell by pulling people into your product, even if it's a high intensity, complex technology product, right? How do you tell the story in terms of vividness? How do you show the end benefit is something that you can say in technical jargon, or you can tell a story around it. I think sometimes we think specifically in technology marketing, that it has to be boring, right? That the way that we need to sell our products is, here are our features, here are the tech specs of what we are putting out into the world. But actually, thinking about telling the story of the end impact, and looking for stories within the company, real stories. I think the beauty of B2B is that you don't actually have to, a lot of times, make up, fictional stories. When you write a brief for an agency, it can be, here's the story we want you to use, because this is a story of a business that has, moved from being a small business to now, one of the, a multi-million-dollar business, for example, and you can find real stories of how this has happened, which makes it a lot easier. And you can let the customers actually tell the story. When real customers tell the story, and I think, Salesforce coming to, I think, a good example of a brand that does this really well. Salesforce has this program that I think they call it Trailblazers, and they have their real customers who are doing amazing things. They're the ones that are doing the speaking. You don't have to cast, you can actually, have real humans in it. And from that lens, I think one thing that I've really thought about in the last few years is, how do we think about B2B to C marketing? Ultimately, everything that we do for businesses or for our partners or for our clients has an end impact on customer somewhere. And I think some of the best B2B brands that have done this exceptionally well, they really talk about that end impact. I've seen, you can see Accenture when they promote Accenture Digital. You don't see their customer in their out of home. You see the end user who's actually benefiting from the technology that has been created through Accenture's clients, right? And I think when you think about B2B to C, how do you tell the story on how it impacts everyone? Because with B2B marketing, it's multidimensional. I would say the closest thing in consumer marketing, I would say, is similar, is thinking about a household. When you're doing B2B marketing, there's so many people, it's not one-to-one anymore. You have to change decision makers across the board, which means you have to talk to multiple influencers, multiple opinion formers. And to be able to do that means you need to tell a holistic story around who the end impact is for. And so I think, as I talk about this more internally, it's like, it's not B2B marketing here and B2C marketing here. It's B2B to C marketing is a way, and storytelling is an absolute amazing way to show that flywheel of the impact that exists.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sapna. If I may just summarize some of the insights and what you said, something that really resonated with me is show but don't tell, right? Sometimes we try to really peel the banana, if you will, right? And try to make it extremely obvious, but let the imagination of the audience or the imagination of the viewer help them create the storyline, help them connect the dots in their mind. I think that's very powerful. Let me just go around the table, the proverbial table, and see if there's a different opinion. Nicki, do you think from the perspective of a B2B versus a B2C, and if we try to unify it and make it a B2B2C, is there a different lens that we should approach end customer focused stories vis-a-vis channel partner or customer based stories?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And the answer from my perspective is, well, yes, in a way there is. So we have our channel partners who have a challenge, and our job is to tell the story on how we help them address that challenge. But we also have our end customers, and they have their own set of challenges. And ultimately, if we can tell the story and share with them how you can get the results, how you can be successful and address their needs, then that's a slightly different story. So again, it's sort of coming at being able to tell different stories to different audiences and making sure that you're relevant. And I think that's what's really important. Ultimately, people purchase from people, and everybody is a consumer, whether you're in the office or whether you're at home, whether you're choosing something to watch on Netflix. So ultimately, it's really down to humans and building that human connection, but helping to, I guess, tell the story on how you actually will help solve their problem or their initial need.
Absolutely, totally agree. And I think we can probably summarize it by saying we tell the same story, but we shift the perspective a bit, right? So that different sets of audiences can relate to it better. Great insights. And I think for the next topic where we will try to...
Sorry, I thought this was really interesting. I know we have actually a few more exciting topics to talk about, but I just want to echo what Sapna and Nicki just said. In fact, the PwC, they did a research on the B2B decision makers a couple of years back. In fact, it's really it's not just about the B2B or B2C, it's really the B2B, in my viewpoint, the B2B to the individuals. So the typical, according to the PwC research, a typical B2B enterprise customer buying team size has been increased significantly over the years. The number is ranging from 7 to 20 people. So can you imagine when you try to sell something, whether it's a new solution, whatever, to an enterprise customer, you need to really cater to each one of those 7 or 20 buyers, influencers in the decision-making process. So how you personalize that story to each one of them, and all of them will be driven by those 3 typical kind of drivers, right? Emotional drivers, economic drivers, and the functional. Functional is no-brainer for B2B. You want to make sure, if you are the one in the decision-making position, you want to make sure whatever you purchase will really help you to improve, address your operational issues, or improve your, productivity, or bring down your cost, improve your profitability, etc. But the emotional connection, actually, like what Nicki mentioned, in B2B world is still very much valid, because in current days, all these B2B decision makers, like including ourselves, right, we're the leaders in certain customer, enterprise companies, but we're also consumers. So we actually expect the same kind of empowerment from the suppliers or solution providers as the empowerment we've got from Amazon, Alibaba, Flipkart, you name it. So the e-commerce has already changed in some of the B2B buyers' behavior and perception and expectation. So that's something new, but it's totally, I totally agree with what the 2 ladies just mentioned. It's really about business to individual, and storytelling is really about personalize your stories, make sure economically, functionally, and emotionally, you can create that connection with each one of those decision makers or influencers in your target customer base. So it's quite interesting and challenging, honestly speaking.
I agree. I totally agree. And I'm glad that you mentioned it's challenging, because as much as we all love stories, and in fact, I had a quote right at the beginning. I know this was not meant to be a death by PowerPoint exercise, but one of my favorite quotes about stories is, never let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? We have seen so many instances where directors of movies take creative liberty with the original story just to make it a little more interesting. So there always is an important question of how authentic these stories must be, right? So the angle of authenticity comes in as well. But in fact, I would not like to wait till the end of the session to take some audience questions, because I see a couple of very interesting topics pop up in the chat. So I think we will just take a slight detour here. We can never go far away from AI, right? If you look at 2020, what are the most discussed topics? There's, of course, COVID. And then there's AI. Everything that we do is influenced by AI. So Abhijit and Praveen have brought up the point that this is probably one area where artificial intelligence can never replace human beings. So emotional intelligence trumps artificial intelligence. And I would agree. I completely agree. However, in this perspective, I would like to mention some of the recent text copy, right? So copywriting is a very important aspect of marketing. And the amount of, or the quality of copy that has been generated by GPL3, which is an artificial intelligence by Elon Musk's OpenAI platform, AI company, you would be amazed to see how emotive those texts can be, right? So while I agree with you, Abhijit and Praveen, that and Sapna, yes, totally, we cannot automate everything, but when we bring in the angle of authenticity and what machines can do, I think we are in for some surprises, right? Sure. Human beings can never be automated out of the storytelling experience, but I think machines have a trick up their sleeve, especially when they're being trained by the best minds and best human minds. Okay, so shifting gears slightly, I would like to, in fact, take the opportunity, since we are in the midst of a detour, I would like to share my screen and talk about a few really good examples of storytelling, and to reiterate my favorite point that Sapna mentioned, which is show but not tell, right? So as a car geek, I'm sure lots of us like cars. So this goes all the way back to probably the early 2000s. I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely the early 2000s. I was a student then when I came across the BMW series of films called The Hire. So classic example, they used BMW cars, but not one single of those movies actually spoke about the feeds and the speeds, right? So how many liters of engine capacity and things like that. But the cars were so beautifully blended with the overall storyline that the message was very, very well articulated. The next example is, in fact, a case where you're not really telling a story, but you are leaving it up almost entirely to the imagination of the viewer, right? IBM did an amazing campaign, quite some time ago, and it was, Smarter Planet. And if we take the story to a more relevant times, right? We all live in a time where diversity and equality has never been more important. So brands like Nike, they don't in fact tell any stories about their shoes, about their culture, about themselves at all. They let their users tell the stories, right? So that is something extremely powerful as well. And I think Sapna alluded to that as well, that how do you get your end customers to evangelize your product? Bringing it closer to home, right? The chubby Parle G kid. This is probably a slightly new concept to the folks who are not born in India, but this little kid has sold more biscuits than many Fortune 100 companies, right? And there's no story here. It's just a cute kid. And that's when we as the users create stories in our own head. So when we talk about storytelling, one very powerful technique can be just give a and let people create stories on their own. And the complete opposite end of the spectrum is another Indian brand called Amul. So this has been a marketing case study or a storytelling case study that has been discussed in many management colleges. So what Amul does is they release these cute but very, very topical pictures which tell stories, and they are very relevant, right? So better soft. So soft basically means clean. So better soft than sorry, right? So these are some examples of storytelling that we see abounding all around us. But now I think let's make it a little more actionable. And I will go back to you, Sapna, in terms of how do you think we can practice what we have discussed, right? So I think this is something we can probably go around the table to see. Give us one good example of how you would use storytelling in the marketing space, especially from a B2B perspective.
That's a great question. These are great examples. There's obviously the case studies and the testimonials are the true and the tried and have been around for years. When I think about in my day-to-day at Google, one of the things that's similar to Amol that we are able to tell stories through is our doodle. People come to the Google homepage and taking our logo and actually putting a twist on it and having a message that could be about anything. And we try, they'll be about politics, about customer success, about holidays, very local insights. And I think, finding these avenues that are not the traditional ways of telling story is something that we've been thinking about as a brand quite a bit. One that we also have recently played with is telling our stories through cinema. Obviously India is, cinema and film mean everything. And in a recent film, we had done a partnership with Amir Khan, which was around YouTube and talking about our YouTube creators, right? Our YouTube creators are everything for YouTube, the people who are the artists, the content creators. We actually told the story through the lens of a content creator and through the film Secret Superstar. So we told the story of YouTube and content creation through film, right? And I think it's one of the better, the ways that when you can get it right, it takes forever. A project like that can, and sometimes these projects where you want to bring things to life and you want to bring stories to life, if you want to get the reach, I think, ultimately we all make a lot of case studies and testimonials and stories, but how do you get reach? I think that's the key question. How do you, and so from that lens, innovating, whether it's through using non-traditional assets like your logo or thinking about cinema, which is probably not something that we would do as B2B marketers. I think we've been thinking about how do we drive that reach and do things differently.
Okay, excellent. I think, the Google Doodles are phenomenal. They're very topical and very thought-provoking as well. So it's actually a great way of learning more about the world, stuff that you would normally not go out seeking, right? But
nothing does beat the real human stories of the real people and the real customers, and those will always be a part of the formula. I think nothing beats hearing from real people who have had impact and the authenticity of that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And since we are on the topic of testimonials and case studies, so Nicki, I have a problem, right? Let me try to find a solution on air so that everyone can learn from it. So I would like to create some video testimonials of my customers, and I created a questionnaire. My team worked on the script, but the customer just doesn't bite, right? So have you, or Lynn, have you ever encountered such situations where we actually struggle to get real customer stories? And what's your take on that? Well, how do you think we should approach getting our customers to tell their stories?
I think that's such a good problem to talk about. I work in cybersecurity. Customers don't always like to tell you about their solutions in cybersecurity for obvious reasons. Right. And I think the challenge here is to flip it around and flip those testimonials around, work with your customers, and what is the benefit that working with a company such as Sophos has delivered to your business? So where have they been able to excel in their own business? Where have they been able to be confident that their cybersecurity needs are protected, that their business and their users are protected, and they're able to go out and do what they do best? So whatever that kind of company is, whatever they do best, they can go and focus on that. Where have they got their own benefits from that? Where have they grown? How have they grown? And how have they reached their own success? So I think finding those authentic stories in the success of your customers is really, really important.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a key takeaway for all of us as marketeers. When we are trying to create stories, let us try to take it one step further so that the story not just focuses on our immediate customers, but tries to capture the value that they have delivered to their customers. And maybe they would,
Yes.
it would be a more motivating, a more inspiring story. Lynn?
Absolutely. More interesting too, right?
Sure.
For people to read or to listen to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually agree with what Nicki just said, because it really depends on who your customers are. And again, I give you a couple of examples. When I was working for Motorola, and one of the major, the B2B side, which is Motorola solution right now. So their business is really, literally number one in the world in terms of the government radio network and mission critical communications. So lots of customers are literally police, public security, police, government agencies. So you can imagine, particularly in Asia, lots of public security agencies, they don't want publicity. They they want to be politically right, and they were like, wow, okay, you want us to do a customer testimonial video? That's going to take another 14 approvals, stuff like that. So it really depends on the customers. So we still were able to convince the customer how this customer testimonial video is not benefiting Motorola as a solution provider, but really benefiting the community, even the whole society, because that gives the community a confidence that this agency has been adopting the most advanced mission critical technology to enable them to do the job right on the time, and also safely as well. So we spin this in a way that makes sure the customer can see the value of the story, whether it's in the format of a digital video or just a white paper, whatever format, but you got to let the customers see the value of what's in it, for them, rather than because, we're marketers for Motorola, we got to do this thing for the company. The same thing for Honeywell, like what Nicki said, right? We serve lots of kind of enterprise customers like Cole. Nicki knows that one of the largest retailer, Woolworths as well in Australia. So the way we convince them to do the video case study with us is really about, again, indicating how advanced digitally they're transforming themselves, adopting the digital, we've been selling this enterprise mobility devices and solution and software. So it's really on the sideline to tell their, consumers that this company, this retailer, this big chain, of supermarkets actually have been so aggressive in adopting the digital, technology to enable them to better serve their consumers. So it's all about telling the story about your customers, rather than like what you said, it's not about telling the story about you yourself. It's really telling the story about your customers and even their customers. So you can always find a way to do that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that is one of the key themes, probably the single biggest takeaway for all of us, that typically when we think about storytelling, we have a problem of tunnel vision. We talk about our company, our products, and our services. The secret lies in finding a way to tell. Ultimately, that's what we do and that's what we get paid for. But we need to tell a story from the perspective of the customers, of the benefits that they have achieved by using our product and services rather than our product and services directly. And since we've had so many great examples, I would like to bring just one more example. While I work with this company called Ingram Micro, there are so many divisions around, and there are many amazing and inspirational things that the different divisions of the company does. So there is a division of Ingram Micro called Cloud. So Ingram Micro Cloud has created this amazing story called the Solvers, right? So Ingram Micro being a distributor, we go to market through our partners. So our channel partners are as integral to our business as our employees. And there's the story. I encourage everyone to just Google or YouTube Ingram Micro the Solvers. And there's a great story to be told there of how our partners are actually going out and solving the problems of the world. So this is another example of how we can tell stories which are not about us, but about our people and the people who use our products and services. So I think that's a nice way to round it up. Great takeaways, and thank you so much, Sapna, Lynn, and of course Nicki. We owe you not just a bottle of wine, but also the coffee in the morning.
Oh,
right?
yes, I'll take you up on the coffee.
Indeed. So we will just pause for a few minutes to see if we have any more interesting questions in the chat. I think I can see Ashwin talking about customer stories are not hostage videos, right? I agree. In fact, the look on the face of a person who has been told that he has to shoot a video for you, I think that itself would tell the whole story of the success. So that's a great point. Shoot happy customer stories, not hostage videos. Great one, Ashwin. Okay, so if there are no more questions, then I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, Lynn.
Yeah, SN, I want to leave one question for the whole audience. You all heard that probably the rest of the news that Elon Musk has dismantled its marketing and PR department. So basically, no one is doing the storytelling job for him because he himself is the story. So I want to ask the audience the question, not necessarily to answer now, but for everyone to think about why he's able to do that. Not because of his Elon Musk, but his business is, because early on, I heard from this professor, the very first guest speaker, talking about marketing is really about sell, not to sell more, but to sell difference and sell new, right? So he's definitely probably not needs to worry about sell the difference because he himself is so different from anyone else. His business is so different. But I really think, it's worth all of us to, as marketers, to think about how we can make our business to be like his business in a way that you even don't need so the budget or people to do the storytelling. Make your products or your services or your company the self, or even the CEO himself or herself as the story. So I don't have the answer, but I thought it's quite interesting to have the debate, offline.
I totally agree, Lynn. Very interesting and very scary thought, I must say. I'm very happy I'm not the chief marketing officer for Tesla. I'd be without a job right now. So yeah, great point. We should have it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, right? So it's the ultimate dream, perpetual motion. If we can translate the concept of perpetual motion into marketing, so it's a self-driving marketing engine, and yeah, we all would aspire to get there someday, but let's hope we still have our jobs intact.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Fantastic panel, great audience, and Sanjay and CMO magazine. Thank you for giving us this forum. Over and out.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you guys.